morning, First Church. It is an honor and a privilege to be speaking to you all on this special Father's Day. Father's Day is a special day for me, obviously, because I am a father of 3 girls. And I have to give you a disclaimer. I am going to be speaking about fathers and sons. I do have a little bit of experience since I work as a psychologist in a private practice setting. But what I'll be talking about today applies to girls and their mothers as well. Now, let's face it, being a parent today is incredibly difficult. We live in a complex and complicated world, and no one is a perfect parent. Not even myself, with my background and training. It really doesn't make a difference when it's your own child. God is the only parent that is perfect. So today we're going to talk about fathers and sons and their relationship. So I'd like to start out by talking about my relationship with my dad. He is deceased. He's been gone a long time. But my dad was an interesting character. He was a hardworking, very resourceful person. Unlike me, I'm a hard worker, but I'm not resourceful when it comes to working with my hands. My father could fix anything. He would never consider hiring someone for something that he could do around the house. Unfortunately, that was not a trait that I acquired from him. And my handyman is forever grateful. So my dad, he was critical at times, controlling and demanding. He had certain sayings that he loved to use. One was, don't just stand there with your teeth in your mouth, or do something, even if it's wrong. But his famous saying, his most oftenly used saying was, I may not be right, but I'm never wrong. And he truly believed that. So that's why I chuckle when I think back at a memory that I had as a kid. My dad and I are riding on a boat that we owned, and we're riding down the canal. He's driving, and he's working on something in the midst of driving, and he's not paying attention. Before you know it, the boat is up on land with the engine still running. And I'm like, Dad, get us off this land, this sandbar, before someone sees us, before one of my friends notices that we're up on land. I was so embarrassed. As a teenager, those are the kind of things that are incredibly embarrassing. But as a parent, we all do embarrassing things at times. And as I said, not one of us is perfect. So today I'm going to talk about relationships with fathers and sons. A lot of it applies to relationships with mothers and daughters as well. But I have a special desire to help those boys grow and become adults, because much of my practice is filled with 20-something-year-old, the 20-something-year-old boy that hasn't matured and grown up. And many of them are like on a raft in the middle of the ocean, and they're just drifting from one direction, being blown by the wind or the rain, and they have no rudder. They have no steering mechanism, no compass, and they're lost. Many of the 20-something-year-olds that I see are lost, and they're looking for direction and guidance. And that's part of what I do, is give them some guidance and give them direction for their lives. But more importantly, what I do is I help them find themselves because they are lost. This world has changed so much in the last 10, 20 years. And our lives have changed. The lives of the boys that we're raising has changed. Think about the changes that have impacted their lives.
In fact, 40% of households are fatherless. 40%. Fathers can make a huge difference in a child's life. Also, girls, they're outperforming guys in a big way, in almost every way. 60% of college undergrads are females. The SAT scores for males is at the lowest point it's been in 40 years. Even medical school. As of 2017, there are more females in medical school than males. And our boys are more likely to struggle with learning disabilities, social and behavioral problems, mental illness. In fact, boys are 3 to 4 times more likely to commit suicide, twice as likely to become alcoholics. So what is happening to our boys? Why are they struggling so badly in life today? Well, one reason I believe, and there are several factors, is that we learn differently as boys. We learn through kinesthetic learning, which is learning through movement. And in today's traditional classroom, we're told to be still and quiet and not move. Actually, in some innovative classrooms, they actually have stand-up desks. And they have a little bar at the bottom. They call it a fidget bar. So if you want to move your foot while you're listening. Kinesthetic learning is learning through movement, which boys thrive on. Something else that is very different today is that boys are not getting the physical activity that they used to. In fact, many public schools, gym class is no longer mandatory. Now, why is physical activity so important? Well, for boys, it's important because it raises the testosterone level. Believe it or not, that's a good thing. I know you have a hard time believing it, but it actually helps with focus, with memory, and with the ability to do well in school, with understanding. So, what else is happening? Well, obviously, it's no secret that boys are spending a lot of time on video games in front of a screen. The average is 4 hours a day that boys spend on video games. 15 to 30% of the boys are addicted to video games. Obviously, that's not a good thing. Something else that I have found is that boys, we have this lower standard for our sons. We have these lower expectations. We've lowered the bar instead of raised the bar. So if they're not in trouble with the law, or if they don't have a drug or alcohol problem, or if they haven't gotten someone pregnant, then they're doing pretty good. No, really, they're not. They're not. We need to raise our standards of our children. something else that parents tend to do is we don't allow our children to fail. Our safety net is way too close. We need to allow them to fail, because when you fail, you grow. You develop resiliency. Remember the expression, everybody's a winner. No, everyone's not a winner. Sorry, doesn't work that way. I would hate it when I would go to an end-of-the-year party for soccer with one of my daughters, and everyone would get a trophy for participation. Are you kidding me? A trophy for participation? Come on. Do you remember American Idol when it first started and Simon was kind of ruthless with some of the contestants? Well, remember, he would often be very blunt. And I remember one of the contestants might just belt out a song, and Simon would say, "That is horrible. That's terrible. Who told you you could sing?" And they would say, "My mother told me I had a great voice. She lied." Why? Why are we not allowing our children to fail? And the other thing that I find all the time with parents is they're not setting consequences for their actions of their children. Ephesians says it very well. Children, this is 6:1, Ephesians, obey your parents because you belong to the Lord, for this is the right thing to do. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise, and if you honor your father and mother, things will go well for you, and you will have a long life on earth. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up with the discipline and the instruction that comes from the Lord. That second part, the discipline and instruction. We need to teach our children that their behaviors have consequences. And we need to implement the consequences. A lot of the couples that I see struggle with that. They're not consistent, or they're in conflict with each other over the consequences. Children need to know that there are consequences to their actions. And you know what? I'd much prefer my child fail while they're under my roof than they fail when they leave the household. Sometimes people think yelling at their kids is the consequence. It's not. They just shut you out. It doesn't work. So as it says, don't let your anger affect the way you treat your child. Maybe what you do is, if you're really angry, tell them that the consequence will be set tomorrow morning. Rather than reacting right at the moment, let them think about it. I'll tell you what the consequence is tomorrow morning, or in an hour or two from now. Rather than yelling and thinking that that's going to work. So, what do we do? What do we do for our kids? How do we help them? Well, one thing we can do is spend time with them. Adventure with them. Adventure. Do things that are stimulating, maybe even risk-taking for boys, because they really love that. Maybe it's surfing, maybe it is rock climbing or hunting. Maybe it is fishing. Maybe it's something that moms really don't want to do with them. But we as fathers can do that with them. Validate them. Validate them Nurture them. Let them know that you are hearing what they say, because really, our kids want to be heard. And try to understand them, even if you can't. Teach them. Teach them how to solve problems. Teach them how to deal with conflict. Because conflict is part of life. It's like taxes. You can't avoid conflict. They're going to have conflict. Help them work through conflict. Maybe even you sit down with them and actually do a role play so that they have a better understanding of how to deal with conflict. Our kids need to learn how to solve problems and manage their time. Something else that boys really enjoy is competition. Most boys, myself included, enjoy competition. Compete with them. I remember this was a few summers back. We had an exchange student from Spain, and she loved ping pong. Well, I love ping pong. So we would play, her and I would play every day while she was with us. I beat her every single time. My girls were like, "Dad, are you ever going to let her win one game?" I said, "No, I'm not going to let her win a game." At the time, it was the Olympics. I said, "This is USA versus Spain, okay? She's not winning. I'm sorry." She came back the next summer and she beat me. But it was legit. She must have practiced the whole year or something. I don't know. But competition is something that boys really, really enjoy. Hold them accountable. Hold them accountable for their actions. Help them to develop self-discipline. Self-discipline. A great way to develop self-discipline is through sports or through music or even academically. But help them develop that self-discipline. Something else that a lot of our boys struggle with is self-confidence. They struggle with self-esteem issues. So one thing that I have people do is I actually have them write out 10 positive traits of their own. And maybe you can help your child in figuring out 10. Because a lot of times they're like, 10? Really? I don't think I can come up with 10. But if I asked you to come up with 10 negative traits, I'm sure you can rattle those off. A lot of people have a hard time finding 10 positive traits in themselves. But maybe you sit down with your son or daughter and you write down 10 positive traits on 10 index cards. And you put them on their nightstand and you ask them, when you wake up in the morning, read those 10 cards. When you go to bed at night, read those 10 cards. Focus on the positive characteristics that you possess. Because a lot of our children are unaware of those positive traits that they have. And most importantly, teach them about the best Father of all, our Heavenly Father. Pray with them. Read the Bible with them. Do a devotional with them. But let them know of God's love, His grace, and His forgiveness. Let them know that they're never alone. Never alone. Because they have God in their life. And they can always turn to God. Our children need our time. They need our attention. And they need our affection. They want our presence, our physical presence, not presents as in gifts. They want our physical presence. Model healthy behaviors, healthy choices. They're always watching. They're always listening. to our interactions. They see us when we're dealing with conflict and how we deal with conflict. So be aware of what you're modeling. How good are you at self-control? Because they're watching. Whether it's related to alcohol or food or spending money, they're watching. They're watching. And they're learning from you. How well do you do when it comes to respect? Especially your spouse. Do your kids get to see you respect your spouse and teach that and interact with them with kindness? Do they see that? Are you trustworthy? Do you do the things you say you're going to do? Do you follow through? Because the definition of trust is consistency in words and actions. I want our kids to trust that they can count on me as a father, and I'm sure you do too. I want our kids to look to me like they would look to you as role models, not celebrities, professional athletes, political leaders, or YouTubers. We don't want those to be their models. Some of them may be good, but some of them not so good. Be a healthy model. From Proverbs, direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it. And then from Deuteronomy 11:18 through 19, so commit yourselves wholeheartedly to the words of mine. Tie them to your hands and wear them on your forehead as reminders. Teach them to your children. Talk about them when you are at home and when you are on the road, when you are going to bed and when you are getting up. Teach them about God's commandments. So here's the challenge for you. Get involved and connect with your children. Have one-on-one time with them. Get into their world. Do things that they enjoy, not just things that you enjoy. And if you don't have sons, maybe you want to get involved in the youth ministry here at the church, or maybe in the community. Maybe you want to go to University Park and help out with some of the boys there. Get involved and connected. And lead by example. Lead by example. And teach. Teach and share your story. Let them know what you did in order to grow up into a man. What was your journey like? How did you become a man? And how did your faith help you along the way? Talk to them about those things. Laugh together. Play together. Pray together. And most importantly, be together. I'd like to read a quote from Billy Graham. A good father is one of the most unsung, unnoticed, unpraised, and yet one of the most valuable assets in our society. Be a father, raise a man. And if you have interest in some of the things I've said, you can go to my website, and I have blogs that I've written on this topic and several other. It's drtonyferretti.com. But I'd like to close you with a really neat story and it's one that I experienced when I was at Promise Keepers many years ago. Now, for you who do not know about Promise Keepers, it's a men's ministry that started in 1990 by Bill McCartney. He was the University of Colorado football coach. And this ministry often occurred at stadiums. There were 35,000 men at these stadium events. And they had some amazing speakers. Yes, I always wished I was one of those speakers at Promise Keepers. I have to be honest. But there was one speaker that spoke about the relationship with the Father and the Son. And I have to get up here for this one. So he spoke about relationship with a father and a son, and he asked for 2 volunteers. A father and a son came up onto the stage. And on the stage, he had traps, like real traps, like a bear trap, a coyote trap, a bobcat trap. They were all on the stage. And he even would test it. He even tested it to show us that these were real traps and they were set. And he said, here's what we're going to do. Because it was all about trust building. So he said, I'm going to have the son over here, and I'm going to place the father all the way on the other side of the stage. And I want the father to instruct the son how to work through those traps, how to make his way around those traps. Now, those traps represented drug problems, alcohol problems, pornography. They represented some of the pitfalls and some of the negative things that boys can get involved with. So, traps are all set, son's standing here, but there's one little feature that's real important. They blindfolded the son. So he's standing there, father all the way on the other side. And the speaker says, okay, I want you to make your way, your dad will help you through. He takes one step forward, and his dad yells, stop! Stop! His son stops. His dad walks over to where he is, takes him by the arm, and he takes him through, around all the traps. Our boys need us to be connected, to help them through the traps of life. Be there for our boys because they need you.